Hey there, Altenew friends, welcome back to another perfect pairing with me. Making multiple cards at one time has never been easier with this revolutionary crafting tool. Keep watching to see how this incredible stamping platform will save you so much time. Before we get into today's project, make sure you subscribe to the Altenew channel for more card making and paper crafting tutorials. My Perfect Pairings with JC series explores crafting techniques that effortlessly blend sure-to-love new releases and well-loved Altenew favorites. If you love these kinds of crafty tutorials, hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of my videos airing on the 2nd and 4th Sunday. I remember when the original stamp wheel came out, that Altenew Billowing Peonies and its coordinating stencil were all the craze. I thought the large floral images were so fun to color with the coordinating stencil, or any of the artistry by Altenew mediums, like woodless coloring pencils, Altenew artist markers, and even watercolor. But with the 7.5-inch platform size, you could really only do this single orientation here, and you had to trim down your cardstock panels to 7.5 inches square. But now with the Stampwheel 2.0, we have a large 9-inch square panel. And now there are so many more possibilities with the orientation of this big billowing peony. And you don't have to trim down your 8.5-inch panel because the side of the Stampwheel stage, this guide right here, comes off. So now your cardstock can overhang on the right side of your Stampwheel stage, enabling you to quickly mass produce cards. And I'll show you what I mean by that. On my stamp wheel stage, I'm going to position my cardstock, letting this right side overhang. Then with the Billowing Peonies outline stamp set, I'm going to find an orientation where I can cover the bottom segment of my panel. And once I'm happy with the placement, I can pick up my stamp with the flip plate, just like on the original stamp wheel. And until I can get my hands on a replacement sticky mat grid for the Stampwheel 2.0, I am going to do my best to keep my sticky mat grid free of blemishes. Instead of stamping the outline in a traditional black ink, I'm going to opt for a mid-tone brown ink. This is Mocha. And once I'm happy with my impression, and since I have this tape guide here, I can use it again to rotate my cardstock panel and bump the cardstock up to my guide and stamp my Billowing Peonies outline on this side of my cardstock. Again, I'm using Mocha fresh dye ink to stamp the outline of Billowing Peonies. So I'm happy with the placement of both of these images. Now I can start filling in this open area in the middle of my cardstock with some Build-A-Garden Breezy petal images. Like all of the Build-A-Garden sets, there's an outline stamp, its coordinating stencil, and if you want to, you can choose to add the die set. Though it's not part of your normal subscription, I just love that you can quickly cut out the outlines of your stamped images, and sometimes you get the offset sentiment layers or some other embellishments that coordinate with your Build-A-Garden for that month. I will be using the add-on die set for this bundle, but really it's only for the sentiments. So right now I'm going to play around with the placement of where I want this bundle of flowers to go. And I'm using the stamp packaging as a way to plan the placement of this bundle, because I want to try to fill up as much of my card as I can in one go. And I'm looking at the A, B, and C cluster here, this larger one. And as I've experimented with making 4-in-1 cards on the Stampwheel 2.0, I found it really helpful to get like a clear acetate guide cut to 4¼ by 5.5 inches, so an A2 size panel, so I can make sure and overlay. So each of the 4 quadrants of my 8.5 by 11-inch sheet have a lot of interest on them. And I also don't want to awkwardly cut like large images like the Billowing Peonies. So this is just a good way to visualize what each of your 4 cards are going to look like. I'm going to remove my guide that I have here. I don't think I need it anymore. Then I'm going to reposition my cardstock using this top left corner as my stability guide. Then I think if I position this stamp just like so, I don't think I should have to mask any portion of this image as I stamp it. You'll see that it almost creeps up to my 4¼ inch side here. And again, this is why this guide is really helpful for me as I plan out these 4-in-1 cards. So I'm going to pick up my Breezy Petals outline stamp, stamp the outline again in Mocha. And once I'm happy with that impression, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, I should be able to rotate my panel 180 degrees, bump it into this top left corner, and without removing the stamp on my flip plate, I should be able to fill in this open area down here. Perfect. And this should finish at least the outline floral stamping on this large panel. So after I clean out my outline stamp, I should be ready for stenciling. So now I can transfer my 8.5 by 11-inch stamped sheet to my 9 by 12 sticky mat grid. So you might be wondering why you can't just do that on A2 size panels, 4 of them. And this is really the reason why, is because now that you have these large clusters, you can stencil this entire image in one go instead of in fragments. And like I demonstrated earlier, especially with the Billowing Peonies stamp set, you could really orient this image one way in the original stamp wheel. But now we can experiment, as you can see, with different orientations and different placements of this large image with the Stampwheel 2.0. It'll be mid to late November when this video publishes, so I thought I would experiment with a moody fall and winter palette. I'm starting with pink crystal on this peony, and since I have the same stencil out, I don't have to worry about cleaning it, because then I can rotate this stencil and position it on the other half of my panel. I'm using a mini ink blending brush to apply pink crystal, and I'm creating a halo of this color around the edge of the peony. So that finishes that layer. And the 9 by 12-inch sticky mat is perfect for 8.5-inch sheets, because as you can see, I still get a lot of overhang, well, enough overhang to adhere my stencil on without using any of the satin masking tape. On this peony, I'll use Strawberry. And just like the previous flower, I'm just creating a halo of this color on the tips of the petals. I can orient my stencil really quickly and repeat the process. Again, I don't have to clean my stencil because I'm using the same color. So filling in this entire panel is going to work up really easily. And hopefully you can see the difference now, especially with this stencil, since both of the second layers are on this single stencil. So once I get the alignment just right on this image, and I'm worrying about this peony here, I used Strawberry on this image, so then I'll move on to Dusty Pink. And on this layer, I'll use Mauve. And I'll make sure not to cross over into my other peony right here that I just ink blended. So there's that layer. Then I can do the same thing on these two images. I'll keep going down the gradient of colors for each of the respective dye inks. So I know I'll need Blush Rose on this flower and Berrylicious on this one. So that's the end result of this layer. Then finally I can work in the final color to both of these flowers using the number 5 stencil in Billowing Peonies. So that's Raspberry Sunset and Acai Berry. And that is those color layers on the other half of my panel. Then I can color the leaves on both of these images as well as the flower centers. So this is stencil layer number 6 for the leaves and these two centers. For a fall feeling foliage palette, I'm starting with Toasted Mauve. I like that this brown has red undertones to it. Kind of reminds me of how rose leaves, when they first bud, they have this sort of reddish undertone to them. And I've also got some burning bushes in my garden. And this is the overall impression that I'm getting for fall right now. So I'll keep those just on the leaves. Then for the peony center, I'll use Misty more. On the smaller bits on stencil number 6 for the flower center, I'll use Marshland. Then finally I can move on to Redwood for the detail leaf layers. Then I'll jump all the way down to Mangrove Root for the peony flower centers. And that'll finish the Billowing Peonies sets of layering images. And of course that just leaves the Breezy Petals layering stencil set for this center portion of my panel. And again, the really wonderful thing about these outline sets that have coordinating stencils is that I don't have to worry about grouping fragmented panels in order to color and ink blend. It's so much faster to do this all in one step than to have to do it 4 separate times, you know, 1 time for each panel. So on the larger grouping of flowers on the number 1 layer stencil, I did Strawberry, and I'll repeat the color palette that I used on the Billowing Peonies on the Breezy Petals Build-A-Garden, so that this is all a cohesive palette and so that it looks intentional as well. So then I can just repeat this on the other side. So that's the first layer, then I can do the second layer. I'll add a halo of Dusty Pink where I applied Strawberry ink. And this is all on this number 2 stencil. Then wherever I applied Pink Crystal, I'll apply a layer of Mauve. On the number 3 stencil, I'll apply Blush Rose to all of the open areas of the petals. To color in the base of the leaves of all of the images, in Build-A-Garden Breezy Petals, I'm going to use the Woodland Garden Altenew Artist Marker set and Toasted Mauve to quickly create a base layer on this entire panel. And filling in these layers takes no time at all. Then I can use the number 5 stencil to fill in the detail layers in the leaves, as well as all of the flower centers found in this set. So moving down from Toasted Mauve is Redwood. I'll fill in the flower centers to all of these images with a light touch of Mangrove Root. Then of course I can repeat this on the other side and fill in the detail layers of the leaves with Redwood. Of course, the more images that you stamp onto your 8.5-inch panel, the more you'll have to layer and stencil. But in the end, I can't think of a faster way to come up with 4 separate cards all at one time. Before I cut my panel apart, what I'm going to do to fill in some of these open areas is add some splatter. I have Espresso watercolor brush marker refill, and I'll add brown splatter instead of jet black ink spray, you know, my favorite way of adding splatter to any panel. I just think it gives a little bit more of that tea-stained antique look, and to me this is just a little bit more fitting for fall and winter. And no matter how much I mass produce cards, I seem to always run out during the holiday season. So for me, any technique that I can use to take the mundane task out of creating 4 of the same card, I just want to make sure I can pass that information on to you all and what I've learned along the way. So I think this needs just a little bit more splatter. The Espresso splatter is really meant to fill in the open areas or the gaps that I have in between the bouquets, but pure white ink spray is what's going to give that dreamy halo or that frosted sort of look on these flowers. So this is pure white ink spray on a fine-tipped Altenew water brush. To save myself some time while this dries, I'm going to go ahead and get some sentiments ready. And like I mentioned, I'm using the Breezy Petals add-on die set just for the sentiments. You can stamp directly on your panels if that's what you choose. But I love when a stamp set like the Build-A-Garden Breezy Petals has the coordinating offset dies to create really refined sentiment banners. I cut apart my panel into 4¼ by 5.5-inch quadrants. And now you'll see I'm left with an array of different backgrounds that I can use for my sentiments. Like I mentioned, I used the Breezy Petals sentiments and the coordinating die set, and now I can find various places to tuck in these sentiments on all 4 of my panels. I foam mounted all of the sentiments to their respective panels, and that finishes an easy way to create 4 cards using one panel. Get your hands on the Stampwheel 2.0 and look at your stash for outline stamps that have coordinating stencils in clusters, and you'll be sure to finish your next batch of cards in a breeze. My series encourages you to shop your existing Altenew stash and rekindle their love with newer releases. Perfect Pairings with JC airs on the Altenew channel every second and fourth Sunday of the month. Please make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Perfect Pairing episode with me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.